We're very excited about our school and about the future of our school, and we wanted to be able to share that with you this evening. Hopefully you all know that we have got a new vision for our school and a mission statement, and you're very aware of our Barts values, and it's taken us some time to put that together because we really wanted to get that right. And what we have now managed to do is to think about where the school is going to be going over the next 3 years, what we want for our children, the strategic direction behind it, and how we're going to get there. So, without further ado, I'd like to hand you over to Mr. Tim Cooley, our Chair of Governors, who's going to tell you a little bit about where we're going next this evening.
I'd like to start by giving you a brief introduction to what the Governors do for the school and our role in setting the vision for the school. The Governor role does involve a number of meetings, and at the end of every meeting we ask ourselves this question: what have we done at this meeting that has improved education for the children in our school? As it's important, improving education for our children is why we're all here. Governors have responsibility in two main areas. There's challenging and supporting the school and setting the strategic direction of the school. Governors are required to be what's known as a challenging friend to the school, and that means making sure that results are monitored against targets and action taken where necessary. Governors also have the slightly less interesting task of making sure that all statutory requirements are met as well. But what we really want to talk about tonight is how the Governors work with the school to help set the strategy for the school. And that leads to the vision, which Charles mentioned earlier, leads to the mission. And Sarah and Sophie are going to talk a bit more about that in just a second. And that then leads into the more detailed school development plan, and Charles and Val are going to give us a good update on how we've developed that. So if I pass over now to Sarah, she'll tell you more about how we set the vision and the mission.
So I wanted to just cover how we actually developed the strategy, and it was really input from parents and staff and governors that have developed the 3-year plan that Sophie will go through next. In setting the strategy, though, we considered a number of different factors which are key to how our children will be educated, both during their time at St Bart's and in their future education, and also their education as they grow in the wider world. So these are some of the things that we considered. We looked at the challenges that our children face and how their learning needs have evolved. The educational world is continually changing. The successive governments introduce more and more regulations, and there's an increasingly and seemingly always changing emphasis on formal assessment, which obviously puts a lot of pressure on the children and the teachers, and often for the parents as well. So we are keen to ensure that we give all the children here at St Bart's the very highest level of academic attainment and progress that each of them is capable of achieving, but also that they are equipped with the diverse set of skills that they will be required to have in today's world. So some of the things we looked at the impact of technology and how that has affected learning both in school and at home. We debated how the changing world of work means that we need to prepare our children for roles and ways of working that may not exist today and perhaps didn't exist certainly in our time. And we also looked at the impact of external pressures caused by modern family life, with changing work patterns, childcare arrangements, and how that informs our children's views of the world in which they live. We have maintained the 3 established curriculum drivers that the staff themselves chose at the beginning of the last academic year, which hopefully you're familiar with, and they are environment, resilience and diversity. And these things stretch across all the learning and all the topics that the children learn during the school. You'll see those on the curriculum roadmaps that you get given for each of your children at the start of term. And then as a Church of England school, we were keen to ensure that all learning and behaviour is underpinned by the Christian ethos that we believe in at this school. We were also keen, though, to ensure that we maintain a broad approach to how we teach world religion in the world and the society in which we live today. So in developing the plan, having considered these and a number of other factors, we built on work that had been done over the previous years, over successive parents and governing bodies. And the school senior leadership team worked with staff and governors to identify the key aspects of how we wanted St Bart's to develop over the coming years. It was a collaborative effort with plenty of lively debate at times, and has led to the establishment through a number of workshops with staff and with governors as to how we want the St Bart's vision that we introduced during 2015. So hopefully this vision isn't new to you. You should have, certainly your children will be familiar with it, and it's something that over the last 6 months or so we've been embedding in the school. And then to support that vision, our mission statement outlines the key ways in which we aim to achieve that. You can read the complete mission statement on the school website, but some of the key behaviours that we hope the school will be recognisable for are listed here. So how we actually go about achieving these things is what the strategy outlines, and Sophie will cover that next.
So as Sarah's outlined, we pulled together the vision and the mission, and this is now, the next 2 or 3 slides are going to go through at a high level the objectives year on year that we're going to aim for as a school. So for this year, if we just pull them all down for now, so I'm not going to dwell on this year's ones in too much detail because Charles and Val are actually going to go through what the nitty-gritty is going to look like. But in effect, we're going to obviously continue many of the excellent things that were done in previous years, but add some extra key areas of focus around the Bart's values. Again, many of you and the children are already familiar with those. Looking to improve and build on parental engagement and communication, and this event tonight is part of the start of that, and hopefully will continue. Staff continued professional development. Without the start of the school, a lot of the things that we're hoping to achieve in the plan aren't really going to happen. And it also needs all of us as parents to get engaged and help pull it together. We hope also to continue to celebrate talents of the children, from that the children achieve, both not just inside the school, but also outside the school, and bring those things together. In 2017, we pull those down. Again, that's going to continue to build on the foundations from this year and in previous years. And just a point of note for 2017 and indeed 2018, you might look at some of the aspects on there and say, well, aren't we actually doing some of these things already? And the answer is, yes, we are. And the intent is that by 2017, the objectives as they are written here will be achieved in full. But clearly the teams will all be taking smaller steps towards achieving that over the coming years, if that makes sense. So for 2017, again, it's up here and it's also in full on the website as well. I'm not going to read it out, but just pulling out a few of the key themes around using things like the whole environment for learning. We have, as some of you may know already, a spiritual learning garden that the children use quite regularly. We have some extensive playing fields. We have new Key Stage 1 learning equipment and play equipment in the playground. And we also have newly updated vegetable gardens that the children have been using already throughout the school year. We will look for, and hope again this will be the start through this and through other POBs communication channels, that we're going to get continued feedback from you, not just on the session today, but also on the strategy longer term as well, so that we continue to build and develop these plans and respond to the context and the environment as it changes, as it no doubt will. One of the other things for 2017 that the teams have already started to do is to look at bringing external role models into their classrooms, into the children. So not just thinking globally around big global role models like Malala, but also more local community ones like our PC Swindell, for example, or our mayor. And also looking at the children themselves. The children achieve enormous amounts both inside and outside the school. And making a lot of the role models that we have there internally to help each other and build skills and knowledge and experience is something that we want to do and continue. So for the final year of the strategic plan, 2018, again, focus on 2 or 3 of the key points here. One of the key aims, obviously, for this school is that our leavers in Year 6 leave the school as fully rounded citizens, as we've termed it here in the strategy. So really making sure they just not understand things academically for the next step at secondary level, but also societally in the news and the world and what's going on around them, so that they're really well equipped for that. There are a lot of initiatives, you'll hear about some of them in the school development plan a little bit later on around pupil-led learning, and we really want to make sure that's embedded in the next 2 to 3 years, and that children feel comfortable learning from their mistakes, as well as the parents do, so we can help to reinforce that with them at home. That this school becomes part of a shared and reciprocal community spirit with events and other activities happening between the community and the church and the school more regularly. And that we continue to have a strong culture with the staff around their own research. I think we'll hear a little bit more about that later on, leading the development of learning for our children in classrooms. So lastly, one of the other important parts of the strategy is the finances. So I'm not going to bore you with numbers, don't worry, for tonight. And if you just pull out all three, actually it's probably just easier because it builds progressively. I don't think it's a big secret to say that the government, and any government, expects all our schools, and this one is no exception, to deliver more for our children with the same or less resources. So that's a challenge that we and a number of other schools face, and we continue therefore as governors to have a responsibility to carefully monitor and plan for a number of different scenarios. Which is why on the strategy for this year in particular, one of our key objectives is to look at a range of different funding streams and make sure that we're planning 2 or 3 years ahead and that we're not going to get caught short. We have a number of fundraising. Some of you know, obviously very familiar, we mentioned earlier the POBS fundraising that many of you contribute to. We also have a Governor's School Fund that was originally created for capital projects. And one of the activities for the trustees this year of that fund is to re-look at the terms of references for that fund and see whether that needs to be and should be updated. And then you'll see that once we've looked at that, then we intend to implement those new funding streams, whatever they may be, in the coming years, and hopefully have financial stability for the future and beyond. One of the other things that we need to look at, obviously, as governors and as part of that financial review is succession planning, and that's for all leaders, whether that's governors or members of the senior leadership team within the school as well. That's just good planning and very pragmatically something that we need to do. So that's all from me. I'm going to hand over to Charles and to Val, who are going to go through a little bit more nitty-gritty for this academic year in what these objectives will translate to.
So that's the three-year plan, if you like, in a nutshell. But just to give you a bit of an idea then of kind of where we as a senior leadership team then fit into the detail around that. Lots of effort and lots of discussion has gone into creating that vision and mission. At the moment, it feels very relevant to us, but in this day and age, things change very, very quickly, and we're mindful of that. So this is something we'll be continually evaluating. We wouldn't want this to become irrelevant within the 3 years, so we'll always be looking at that and making sure that it is still fit for purpose. But that 3-year plan, that strategy, gives us a kind of roadmap of where we're going. And then my job as the head teacher, together with my leadership team, is to work out the detail as to how we're going to make that journey. And to help us to achieve that, we write an operational document which we call our school development plan. That lets us know the actions and the success criteria and the timescales and the costs and so on. And this year, there are 8 major priorities in our school development plan. They're all linked to that bigger picture that you've seen in the strategy. So Mrs. Elliott and I, Valerie and I, are going to take it in turns to go through those with you and give you a bit of a flavour as to what we're hoping to achieve by the very end of this year. And the first one there, improving communication with parents. It's something we always try to get right, but we are under the impression that we don't always get it right, and it is very difficult. The school has grown, and it's really, really important with a big school that we communicate well with you. But the research shows by John West Burnham that in terms of having an impact on a child's education, the school can only ever hope to have 20% of the impact on a child's education. And broken down, 14% of that is proven to come from the class teacher and 6% from the leadership team. The other 80% comes from you. You are the main adults and the main role models in your children's lives, and with your support and your interest in their education, that is what's going to make the difference. In fact, I'll quote another statistic at you. Regardless of your socioeconomic background, the evidence suggests that when parents play a role in their children's learning, in the life of the school, that child will definitely make, on average, a 15% difference to their attainment by having your involvement. If we all really want the children to read, then how often do they see you reading? Because if you don't read, they might not want to read themselves, because children always want to be like their parents. We are putting together a forum of parents to meet with myself and Sarah and Zenobia, another one of our governors, where we're going to be asking some questions just to find out what we can do to communicate better. We'd like to establish a communication policy as a school. Then the other thing we're very keen to explore as well is what the potential barriers to your engagement, and I say your, I'm talking about the entire parent body here, your engagement with the school might be. Maybe it's that we do too many evenings like this, and they're in the evening, and they need to be during the day.
One of the things that we've always been very committed to doing is really nurturing and developing our staff. And in a time where recruitment is getting tighter and tighter to get high quality staff, it's even more important that we really invest in the people that we've got with us now, and we make them feel valued and we give them opportunities to really grow with us. Of course, most importantly, that means that your children get the best education that we can offer. Well, we've always managed to bring in high quality trainers and use the services of people like Babcock, which is an organisation you may have heard of, which is employed by Surrey to deliver very high quality professional training. You may wonder what we get up to on our inset days. This coming on before half term, we're going to have some training on how to best involve you in your child's education, how we can support you and communicate, as Mr. Beckerson has said, effectively with you. But one of the other things we've also tried to do is actually be really reflective and actually do our own research, as has been alluded to earlier. And we've done that in something called Lesson Study, and that involves a group of teachers who come together and they do a bit of research on a particular area that they'd like to find out more about. They observe the children over a period of time, they talk about what they've seen, and together they formulate something, or an idea, or a new policy, which they then share with the rest of the staff.
So the third priority of the school development plan, you can see further develop creative and innovative teaching. And we say further develop because we're actually quite a long way down that road already. We do feel that we do embrace a creative curriculum, and we do our best to make sure that the children are well involved in helping out with the planning of what they're going to be learning. We're very interested in seeking their views and making it relevant. What we need to do is, in terms of that creativity, we're not just talking about creativity in the sense of good musicianship or being a fantastic painter or artist. We're talking about creative problem solving, that kind of creativity. And we're talking about ourselves as teachers being role models. You may have seen in the strategy earlier that by the end of 2017, we'd like to be in a place where our staff feel very comfortable to role model for children the actual essence of learning. And what we mean by that is that rather than standing up there as someone who already knows it all and is a sort of mind of knowledge, it's more about role modelling for the children that we don't always know everything, and that we need to have the skill set appropriate to tackle these different problems and to find new ways in and out of situations. So again, it comes back to being relevant, and it's all about preparing our children for an unknown future.
Number 4 talks about ensuring excellent outcomes for children with special educational needs. Obviously, we want to ensure outcomes for all our children, but we recognise that for some children, we need to provide them with extra support. And we've had a few challenges, and we've worked very hard to make sure that those children get the best support that they can. And one of the things we've really been trying to develop is actually giving those children much more support in the classroom with their class teacher or their class TA. Some of you may remember that perhaps in the past children may have gone out and worked with another TA if they were working on a particular support or intervention. What we're trying to do is make sure that those children are included much more in the classroom, that they're getting support in the classroom with their peers, with people familiar with them, because that helps them to make connections in their learning much more, and it helps them to really feel positive about what's happening and have a good self-esteem. We've started to work much more closely with teachers in developing what needs to be put in place. Obviously our Synco will advise us, but we're actually working as a team and thinking, what is it that a child needs, what do we need to put in place, being perhaps much more reflective and thinking about the impact of it much more quickly. And that requires us to actually put in a bit more training for teachers, to explore what provision is out there, and to try and be a little bit more reflective about how we support these children so that they do have the best outcomes.
I'd like to talk to you now and possibly introduce you for the first time to something called Mindset for Learning. Mindset for Learning is something which I'm feeling really hugely interested in at the moment. Something that has bothered me for many years is watching children who, I don't know whether you can identify this in your own children or in other children or indeed in yourselves, children who get to a stage in their learning where they just say, I can't do it, I won't do it, I'm going to give up, it's too difficult, if I try I might fail, that kind of thing. And we need to get past that. And we've been reading the research of Professor Carol Dweck, who's the Professor of Psychology at Stanford University. And her research is very interesting. And it indicates that there are two possible ways in which people, as learners, view their own abilities. Some of us believe that our success is based on innate ability. And those of us that fit that mould are said to have what's called a fixed mindset. Other people believe that success is based on their hard work, learning, training, and a kind of dogged determination to do well. And those people are said to have a growth mindset. So what does this look like? Well, people with a fixed mindset dread failure. And they dread failure because they see it as a negative statement of their abilities. And people with a growth mindset, conversely, they don't mind or fear failure as much. I think there's an element that we all fear it a little bit, but they don't fear it as much. And that's because they realise that their performance can be improved and that learning can come from making mistakes. And Carol Dweck's research has actually led her then to the conclusion that people with a growth mindset will eventually lead less stressful and more successful lives. So how are we going to introduce that here to primary school children? Well, partly we're not sure. We've got a specialist coming in on our inset day to work with us on this. But so far, our planning is that the teachers are each going to, they're going to work together in their phase teams to plan age-appropriate lessons for the children on the brain, so that the children can all confidently talk about their brain, where it is, what it is, how to stretch it, and so on. We've also got some slogans that we'll be introducing to the school. And they might sound simple, but we think that they're going to be very important for the children because of the positive messages behind them. So one of them, which links to our curriculum driver, is we have resilience, i.e. we don't give up. Mistakes help us learn. That's going to be a big one. And it's where you as parents are really going to be able to help, because it's that fear of making mistakes that stops a child from trying something new. And the problem is we reinforce it so often. The number of times as a teacher I've said to children in the past, I'm not very good at drawing. I wish I hadn't said it now, because if I'm saying that, what are they thinking of me? And I've heard children so often say, oh, I'm no good at football, or I can't do maths. And of course I'm saying, yes you can, don't be silly. But I've got to be a role model for that myself. And hard work is fantastic. So those are our three slogans. And why is hard work fantastic? Well, if you think about what we've said about fixed mindsets and growth mindsets, the fact is that effort is what we need to be praising, not outcomes. All the time that we praise outcomes, you're almost reinforcing for a child, well, that's really brilliant, you're going to have to do better than that next time, and it makes it feel to them like it might be unachievable. Whereas hard work is fantastic. Always try, don't worry if you get it wrong, keep trying, because your effort is what's going to help you. And going back to what I was talking about earlier, in terms of preparing children for an unknown future, they are going to have to put a lot more effort into the way they reinvent themselves and get themselves ready for that unknown future than perhaps we had to do. We also intend to illustrate the characteristics of the growth mindset through stories, maybe our own stories and anecdotes as teachers, and their own stories and anecdotes. I always celebrate their individual achievements in Monday's assembly. I'm sure some of you will know because your children have brought in some of their achievements for me to share. But we also intend to get visitors in as well, people who have overcome difficulty. So that's a really important one. And we look forward to introducing that to the children and to sharing more about that with you. But I think that from what I've said already this evening, it might make you think about the way in which you say things at home with the children about their learning and your learning.
Our next priority is to highlight British values and their place in our school and society. You might have heard of British values. It's something that's certainly been out in the media over the last few months. It's part of a nationwide government policy. They are defined as individual liberty, democracy, rule of law, and tolerance and mutual respect of each other and faiths and non-faiths. And I think you'll agree with me that those are values that most people hold. And they're certainly things that we have been doing in our school over quite a long period of time. We recently had a meeting to discuss this. It's now a part of the Ofsted inspection framework, British values. So we as a school have to be showing that we are addressing these in a sort of overt, discreet way, as much as we do through our ethos and through our teaching. So we held the meeting and we talked about all the things that we feel we do as a school, which cover these values. And we worked right from early years, right up to year 6, and through the things that the staff do as well. And we have flip charts that are covered in 100 different things. You know, we feel that we cover these things well as a school. But we need to highlight them to children. And we need to have good discussions about some of these things, especially considering everything that is happening around us as well. So next week, we are going to have a British Values Week. And the first thing we're going to talk about with the children is democracy. And we're going to have an assembly. We're going to introduce it to the children. And then throughout the whole school, children will be doing age-appropriate 1 or 2 activities around democracy. And I think you'll agree, actually, it's a very worthwhile discussion. If anyone would like to come in and talk about their experiences, you'll be very welcome. But it's something that, it's something that we've always done well as a school. And really, British Values is just about highlighting these particular ones to the children and carrying on the good work that we do.
I'd like to talk about the development of our school library. There's a strong correlation between effective school libraries and improving literacy skills and independent learning. One of the things that's happened here at St Bart's over the last few years is that the school has massively grown. And what hasn't grown so quickly with it is the school library. So we intend to do something about that. We've got a lovely library, we're very proud of it, but it does need updating. So what are we specifically going to do? Well, we're looking at writing a new library policy, looking at the ways in which the children use the library and have access to the books and other resources in the library, providing staff with adequate training to use the library properly. We'll be updating the software for the information management system. We'll be refurbishing the room and updating the current book stock, hopefully with some funding from our POG as well, and some of our school funding. So we're very excited about that. And then once we've done all of that, we also intend to really improve pupil engagement by providing the children with interactive activities throughout the year to improve their reading for pleasure, to improve their own information literacy skills, and to encourage them to become more critical thinkers and able to support their own learning by doing their own research and finding their own reading material.
Finally, and perhaps most importantly, we're going to link our values, that's our Bart's values, believe, achieve, respect, trust and succeed, to the values that are Christian, that we already teach through our worship. And anyway, it's fitting that that's the last thing on our plan, because actually a school without strong values is not a successful school. There is a lot of research that shows that when you have strong ethos in a school with strong values, then everybody really understands what they're doing and can achieve and feel successful. And for many times, we've managed to embed the Bart's values very well with the children now. But what we want to do is link those across to their worship sessions in each worship session, we usually take a Christian value, and we like to try and bring those two together so that the children can begin to piece it all together and understand how things fit. And we want to do that through things like real life experiences, link the Bart's values to Bible stories and figures from the Bible. As we talked already, we talk about linking the values to people nationally, people in the community, people within the school. So really, well, we've introduced them before, it's been very successful, but now we want to add a bit more meaning to what they actually mean and really get the children to live them and to take them forward when they leave our school.
Thanks, Charles and Val. I hope you found that interesting. We've gone through the whole session of how we've gone from vision down to school development plan, and I think really the vision and the mission is great, and we're really pleased with it. The nitty-gritty of what we're doing over the next year, I think, is really important for the school. So we've got to that stage. Now what are we going to do on an ongoing basis? Well, we have plenty of internal and external monitoring. I mean, the most obvious external monitoring is Ofsted. They come in every 3 to 5 years. We have SIAMS, which is the church-based review. And we have a lot of internal monitoring from the senior leadership team, going into classrooms, seeing how teachers are getting on, making sure we do have a high-quality teaching staff. Then all of that comes into feedback, and that could be parents as well, parents, staff, children, and the monitoring that we've done, and feeds back in, and we look at how the environment's changed, and do we need to change the vision and mission, and so on. So that's what we're intending to do. We'd like to do this sort of evening on a more regular basis, but appreciate feedback to see whether people think it is worthwhile. But we really want to make sure the school is communicating with everybody about what they're doing.